Hi, I'm Ronnie Sanderson, and today I want to tell you how I was able to go from $0 out of my own pocket into a $1.5 million worth of equity in real estate. And so I just want to kind of break this down and let you see how I was able to do that. It was actually over a 5-year period, and so it was probably the best time in real estate to invest. There was some luck involved, but there was also some skill involved and a lot of research to be able to get to that point. So, first of all, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a real estate agent. I started in 2001. So, I've been in the real estate business for about 25 years. I have an office in Arkansas, a couple of offices in Arkansas, and I also do real estate in Oklahoma as well. I have a license in both states. I've been investing in real estate since 2006. Between 2018 and 2023, I was able to go from 2 units all the way up to 45 units. So I just want to kind of break down and let you know how that happened. So first of all, the way that I got to be from $0 invested is that I actually owned some cattle at that time. My father-in-law had some real estate, pretty good sized piece of land, and so I bought some cattle and I wanted to buy a duplex. And so whenever I talked to the bank, they said, you don't have to have any of your own money. You can actually have equity. So use your equity. So I actually had used about $12,000 worth of equity that I had in some cattle that I had paid off. So the first duplex that I bought was in 2007, and that one was a uh, 1 bedroom, 1 bath per side. And that one rented out. When I bought it, he was renting it out for like $300 a side. He really wasn't making any money on it. And so, 600 total dollars coming in each month. And so he wanted 65,000 for it. So I knew that I could get the rents up and make more money than that. So I ended up buying that property with zero of my own dollars out of my pocket, and I actually bought it from him for 67,000. He paid 2,000 of my closing cost because I literally wanted to have nothing coming out of my bank account. And so over time, that property actually went down in value because in 2007 we had the market really started a collapse, and so 2009, 10, that property was worth even less than what I had paid for it. But over time, it recovered, and I was able to raise the rents and get them higher. And so by 2018, I had a buddy that wanted to sell a fourplex, and so I told him, I said, and I'll try to see if I can get it sold for you. And I told a few of my investors about it, and nobody really seemed to be interested in it. So I ended up buying that from him for $200,000 for a fourplex. That fourplex at the time, each unit was renting out for about $500 a month. So it was making a total of $2,000 a month, and I paid $200,000 for it, which is where I kind of like to keep the numbers if I can. Try to use that 1% rule. And what that means is that if it's renting out for $2,000 a month, then you could pay 1%. That would be 1% of the purchase price. So uh, a $200,000 purchase price, 2,000 a month, the numbers worked for me. Well, I went back to him and I told him I need to get the duplex that I have now. I need to get that property sold in order to have the cash to be able to pay for this. So over this period of time, from 2007 to 2018, the property had went back up in value enough. I was renting it out for enough that I was able to sell the property for 92,000. With what I owed on the property minus the closing costs that I had about $50,000 worth of equity that I could put down on this new fourplex. Now, a bank is going to require about 20% most of the time to put down on a property. So I had 50,000 to put down, so that was plenty of money to meet that. So I could essentially get a loan for 80%. In this case, I did even a little bit better than that. And so I did what's called a 1031 tax exchange. Now, the way that that works is if any money that you actually put into your bank account from a transaction, the IRS is going to hit you for a percentage of that in what's called capital gains taxes. And so, in order to keep from paying capital gains taxes, what you want to do is a 1031 tax exchange, which is a holding company that you give a limited power of attorney to. And instead of the money at closing going to you and going into your bank account, it actually goes into a holding account. And then whenever you purchase a new property of equal or greater value, there's several rules that you got to, make sure that you apply by those rules. That as long as you do what you're supposed to do, then they do not hit you for the capital gains taxes. So you definitely want to check with your own CPA. I don't give tax advice, any kind of legal advice, but just telling you the way that the transaction worked for me. And so there was $50,000 that I was able to put down on this new property that I was purchasing. And that came in at 200,000. I put 50,000 down, so I had a mortgage for the other 150,000. So I purchased this new property in 2018 and I kept the property for a year. I was able to get the rents up. One of the units was vacant. I was able to take that from $500 for that unit per month, took it to $600. I had another unit that came available and I was able to get 675 out of that unit. And so, I do small things to the property, a little bit of value add, but not a whole lot at this point. So I went back to the bank and I said, hey, I've got a property that I think is going to appraise for more than what it did whenever I purchased it. I've got the rents up. I think we can get a better appraisal. And so the appraiser came in and looked at the property and he said, we're making 675 a month, and we were able uh, to justify a new appraisal at $270,000. So the way that this works is I can actually do a refinance and pull out 80% of the value of the property, whatever it appraises for. I can pull out 80% of that. So the way that this worked in this case is at 270,000, 80% was a new loan for 216,000. Now you have to pay off your old loan, so that was 150,000, and so that left $66,000 that I was able to pull out of this property. So 2019, I bought this duplex. The price of it was $80,000, and I actually did a construction loan whenever I bought the property because it wasn't in very good shape. So I was able to go in and borrow enough money on the property to put in all new windows, repaint the brick, fix the soffits and fascia, put in all new shingles. I actually had to do some new driveways on this one, and it really increased the value of it, increased the desirability. And then we did some painting and different things on the insides of one of the units, changed out the plugs and the switches, and we were able to get more rent out of this one, and I was able to get the value up to where I purchased it for $80,000, and then I was able to sell it for 126,000. Now, normally I would have just kept it. I really didn't want to sell it, but I had an opportunity to purchase two more duplexes and a lot in a town where my office was at, so it was a lot more desirable for me to own that property. So I sold that duplex and I purchased the two duplexes and the lot with that. This was right around 2019, and we put this under contract and actually closed on the new units in 2020. And of course, we know what happened in 2020 with all the COVID and the lockdowns and the shutdowns and things like that. So I purchased this around February of 2020. And then by March and April, my thoughts was that with nobody working, real estate has an opportunity may go down. We may not have renters be able to make their payments if they're not working, and so I ended up selling that lot. I mean, of course, now I wish I had it back, but hindsight's always 2020, no pun intended. But I sold that lot off. I did keep the duplexes and was able to utilize cash out of that later on. I'll tell you about that. So in 2020, with being locked down and shut down in the house, and I really wanted to figure out what was going on, across the nation, what was going on with real estate. So I was getting online all the time, and I was doing podcasts, and I was listening to all the gurus and everybody that's out there. And it really gave me an opportunity to see what other investors were doing, to really see what other real estate agents were doing, just trying to get better and figure out, how are they making money during this time. And so I found Bigger Pockets, which is definitely something that I recommend to anybody who's getting into investing. Brandon Turner, I believe, is a great person to listen to, and understand real estate investing and get to know the markets and things like that. David Green is another one that I think is definitely somebody that you should be listening to. I also listened to Ken McElroy, and at that time, Graham Stephan was doing real estate, and so I wanted to see, different areas. Graham being in California and Ken being in Arizona, um, and then, Grant Cardone, I even listened to him, which he's quite a bit different, investing much bigger scale. But, I was kind of seeing what was going on in the Florida market. And it really gave me an opportunity to see how people are investing and what they're doing, and maybe take some of their tricks. And so that gave me a great opportunity to do that. So in 2020, I really started going big into, trying to pick up units, and using 1031 tax exchange, using refinance, cash out refinance, and really trying to do everything that I could do to purchase as many as I could, because you could see how the market was going up. And if you were going to invest, that was the best time to get it done. So in 2022, I found a market over in Oklahoma that was, prices were about half the price of what they were where I was investing in Arkansas, but yet the rents were, you know, they were only down maybe 10 to 20%. And so the numbers worked much better. So I ended up buying a house for $52,000 that rented out for instantly for over 700. I bought another house which was in really poor condition. I bought it for 22,000. We had to do a lot of work to that. I ended up putting 35,000 into that one. But still, even with that, I had a mortgage for $44,000, even with putting a lot of my own money into it. But we were able to use our own sweat equity, and I had some buddies that helped me get into that one pretty cheap with repairs and things to that. So I bought two more houses that were on one lot. Bought that for another 66,000. They had income of over $1,200 a month off of $66,000 purchase. So that ended up being a good purchase. Then I found four really bad condition houses. One of them probably should have just went ahead and bulldozed it over, but I ended up fixing it up. But it was uninhabitable when I bought it. The other units were probably uninhabitable, but people were still living there somehow. Um, so I picked those up and fixed those up, and really tried to get the as cheap as I could, but yet try to maximize the amount of rent that I was able to get out of those. Bought those for $50,000. Actually did an owner finance on that one. So I put a little bit of money down, and he carried it. And then I was able to buy another piece of property that had 5 units, making I think 23 or 2,500 a month in income. And I bought these properties for 60,000 and actually paid cash for those. But $60,000 for 5 total units. I only had $12,000 per unit in that. I mean, like I say, we were finding some really good deals. So that was the end of 2020, first of 2021. And then ending up by the end of that year, I was able to pull off another deal where I had three duplexes that were on a bigger lot that actually brought in only $1,200 a month for these 6 units. They were very small studio apartments. This guy was renting each unit out for $200 a month. So I had a guy that beat me out on that, and he was going to try to purchase it, but he went to the bank, and they wanted close to 200,000 for this property, and he's only getting $1,200 a month. He was not able to get it, but I knew that you could get way more than that out of it. So I actually talked to my bank, and I said, look, I know for sure I can get at least $400 a unit out of these properties, and probably more than that. So at $2,400 a month for six properties, 200,000 is not that bad of a deal. So I ended up buying that property for 185,000. So then in 2022, I had more, good fortune that happened. My banker actually changed banks, and when they did, they were really trying to get aggressive and pull in some investors, and pull people over that they knew. And so they were offering me 4% interest if I did a cash out refinance at 4% interest. And on new purchases, they would do 4.5% interest. And another great thing is they were doing 85% loan to value. So I could get an appraisal and borrow 85% rather than 80%. So I was able to do that on some of the properties that I had. At this time, I still had some good equity left in my um, in my fourplex and my two duplexes. So I ended up pulling out about $250,000 worth of cash. And again, that's you don't pay taxes on it when you refinance, you pay taxes on it when it sells. And so I was able to have $250,000 to use and buy other properties with. So that's why in 2022, I was able to buy an 8 unit apartment complex, all brick, really nice. The rents were low. They were like 650 a month for a 2 bedroom, one bath, built in the late 90s units. So I was able to buy that for 480,000 because they were making 5,100, something like that, per month, 5,200, somewhere in that neighborhood. Um, and so I was able to buy those, and I still own those today. And now we're getting 850 to 950 on those units. So we've been able to pull the cash flow up for sure. And then in 2023, I was able to take some of that cash and purchase another piece of property um, that was actually two houses. They were in terrible condition on one lot, but I got both houses together for $40,000, and that was in 2023. And my payment was like $233 a month. Um, Insurance is low, tax was low, and those properties were making me about $1,250 a month in gross rent. So that ended up being a good deal for me for cash flow wise. And then I also purchased 8 units in another town over in Oklahoma. And this guy had taken an old abandoned building that had 8 units, and he was starting to fix them up, and he hadn't even got it completed whenever I found them. So um, I was able to just call him up one day and said, "Hey, have you got anything?" And he said, "Yeah, I've got these 8 units." So um, he rented out one of the units before I purchased it, and he was able to get 600 out of that unit. But I bought that whole building for 250,000. Put $50,000 down on it, and so I'm financing $200,000, and this thing has got the potential to make 4,800 a month. And so when it's all said and done, I had 45 units in 2023. They had a gross revenue of about $32,500 a month. Um, and so those 45 units were worth somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.3 to 3.4 million. And I owed about a 1.8, 1.9 million, somewhere in there. 1.875 million is about what I owed at that time. So I had a net worth of somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 million. So I really appreciate you guys joining me, and I just wanted to give you some tips and tricks, and hopefully you're able to take something that you've learned today and use it in your own business and be able to be successful. Because really, I want everybody to be successful. It doesn't do any good for one or two to be successful and everybody else struggle. I'd really like to see everybody be able to be successful in real estate. And right now is a great opportunity. Things are not like they were 5 years ago, but there are still opportunities out there. You just got to know where to look and, find a good realtor in your area to help you out, somebody that knows the market. And there are still areas out there where you can find cash flow and hopefully be successful. Have a good day.